Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 65 of the Office Hours podcast. Today, we're happy to welcome back Mo. We're just sitting here before hitting the record, talking about various things finances, managing money, all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
got kind of carried away. But I don't know. What do you want to talk about besides those things?
Um, a few things, but I like to always check on you first.
Mm.
How are you doing? How is life? You good?
Life's
What's
mostly
new and
good.
excited?
It's new and exciting. Oh, hey, you dare to use my spells against me, Potter?
Tell
um,
me, Vasili.
right. In terms of that, not really that much. Everything's just slowly kind of progressing the way it's supposed to. But I don't know, facing some frustrations at work, facing some frustrations with the new cohort of developers, uh, like the modern web developer, the 2010 web developer or developer in general. I don't know. I just it's not the same, man. It's not the same.
Well, it's different generation. I tell you these things. Like we have, there is a, there are differences, and and it's good. It's the beauty of it. I just don't know. I don't think I can tell from your shoes, but from mine, I think it's interesting, like
Yeah.
to see everyone approach this job differently.
Yeah, I don't know. I find a lot of not like carelessness is not really. I find that people don't care. It's not like they're careless. It's just that they don't care. They don't take time to understand what they're doing and how to do it in the best possible way, limited by their skills. They just kind of do the first odd thing that happens to work and call it a day a lot of time. And I don't know if I'm mischaracterizing people, but just by judging by what's been happening in the code base, I'm
Hmm.
like not not enthusiastic about it, is how I would put it. I was like, man, this could have done so much better. Why wasn't it? Why is it that it's just like, here, there you go, you know?
That's interesting. But this, like I said, I can't see from your shoes. From mine, I feel like we have the newer generations have more, how do you say it? Like they take more risks. Like they feel like they know a lot of things. And
But do they know a lot of
maybe
things or do they feel like they know a lot of things? Because those are very different things.
the way I see it, it seems like, when you become a teenager first, how you feel like you know a lot of things.
Well, you
And
know
maybe you know.
everything when you're a teenager, literally everything.
Yeah, so like sometimes like maybe if you are trying to like talk about certain things, then it gets like now you have to really explain. And in, for me, at least I can tell from my own side, like when I'm talking to someone who happens to actually have more experience than me, I listen. I just listen, and if
Hmm.
I don't agree, I can go to read about it or like learn something about it and then, add to my knowledge. But I find like now it's different. Like if you say something like, oh yeah, this is the good way to do this.
Hmm.
It's like now you have to get into like a mini debate because yeah, now they will like ask you like rebuttal questions and like like you have to go and explain, spread yourself like an hour or so into the explanation. I have other things to do, like but it's I guess it's the fun of it, I guess.
Well, I guess in
How
my
we feel.
scenario, it's a little bit different because I find that I like start talking about something and then I wax poetic for like half an hour, extolling virtues of different approaches, and everyone kind of is smiling and nodding and everything. And then in the end, none of those ideas get propagated into the code base itself. So everyone agrees, but nobody just gives a shit to actually do it that way. It almost feels like. And I don't know if it's like, what is it based on? Like, I don't know. I don't want to start saying things that could be interpreted like I'm bad mouthing my colleagues, which is not what I'm trying to say. It's just more
No,
of a like the state of mind. It's like, why do
it's
people
therapy.
not care about their craft as they seemingly used to before? You know, and I think it
It,
kind of it spills out into more things than just this, right?
mm,
It's like, it's kind of like fast fashion, but in development. You
mm.
know, you just buy
Um,
something that's very cheap that lasts you 3 times and then breaks and then you throw it out. And when was the last time when you looked at something, you're like, oh, wow, the craftsmanship on this thing is really, really nice? It just doesn't happen because I don't think that there's, and it's not like there's no value in it. It's just, I guess, people learn to value things differently. So it almost feels like a value conflict. We value different things in what constitutes good code versus not so good code. And
you
now,
know what?
because I value certain things that people don't seem to value, I always find myself being disappointed.
You know what, Vasili, this actually is a very good segue into something I was going to talk to you about today.
Oh, nice.
Last year, we were having a conversation and slightly we touched about like code reviews.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said like you learned something new and then you have something you would like to share. I hope you remember.
Vaguely.
I hope
I'm
you,
trying to recall what I
I
was
hope,
saying in there.
but what I was gonna share with you now is that I think there are some situations that happen within the team that's probably responsible for some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can speak from my own experience. Again, I've not walked in your shoes, so I don't really know how it really happens. But from my own point of view, I feel like sometimes it's not really like they don't care to do it, or like I think some hypothetically, if you have to contribute to a code base where like you see someone doing something wrong, like following the bad concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
You see, and this code base is like what, like 1,000 lines or something like this. And all you really want to do in that file is probably just add a condition somewhere. And you have seen it, but now you're going to add the same condition based on how it was done
Yeah, that's
earlier.
true. They replicate what's already around.
Yeah, so now you're not going to really like, it's not that they don't know it's bad. Like, I can see it's bad. Also, there is also the fact that sometimes companies don't really like the management probably will not really understand that it takes time to do certain things well. There's difference between doing it well and doing it. They just want to know it's out, you merged, and now you have like productivity is going up because you have more tickets getting into getting closed, and nobody's really gonna be asking like, oh yeah, like um, did you do the refactor or like did you cover all the tests? I mean, if you work in a team that cares about stuff like this, like you'll be lucky. And I would say maybe I'm maybe I'm one of them right now, like to say like because I think nowadays we can't tend to actually care about stuff like this, so we try to like do like coverage, improve coverage, and do
Mm-hmm.
like there's all these kind of things to see make it good. But in the past, like you can still see some of these things, some of the concepts in the past, and if you don't have enough experience to see them as not good enough and fix it, you will probably just contribute to it and add
Well,
more to it.
that's kind of what I was going to. It's that it feels like people don't see what's bad about them. You know, it's like when you watch those action movies and there's like a hacking scene and you look at it like, oh my god, this is so ridiculous, right? Because it has no bearing on reality of what's actually going on. Or like my dad's a chemist, and when he was watching Breaking Bad, he said, "Oh my God, everything they do chemistry wise doesn't really make sense," which is fair enough because you don't really want to teach people how to do that stuff on national television, sure. But the point is, if you're a professional in your area and you see something being done incorrectly, it's gonna be like that scene with Leonardo DiCaprio, like, like right there, I see it, right? And people feels like just don't see it, and that's the part that's kind of what's the word? That's the part that gets me depressed about it, because it's like, why not? And what is the future gonna be like? Like, I don't know. When I retire 20 years from now, if that situation doesn't change, then the trend is clearly going in a really bad direction.
Yeah.
So what are we gonna be doing? Well, I guess I wouldn't care by then because I'll be retired. Not gonna be my problem. But you know what I'm saying, right?
I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying. Actually, I hope it's no longer your problem. But the thing is, but the thing is, like, what we're talking about here is gonna be like shared and passed down, because I'm trying to learn a way to actually like I mean, if we really look into like there's some tools now that you have like in the pipeline that can actually check for some issues with the codes, maybe like look into like some cyclomatic complex. How do
Yeah,
you say
but
that? It's like
these things are fair
small
enough, but
things like
they
this.
are very, again, this kind of creates this situation where it's doing things to the checklist. I think we talked about it before. It's like, as soon as you have a checklist, you can just do the things to that checklist and not iota more and call it a day and be kind of within your right to do it that way. Because, hey, you've done everything to the checklist, like, can't really ask anything more of you, right? So that's the problem. Like, we have a tool that like scans the code and it says like, oh, you have duplications there. And it's like, okay, let's fix duplications by moving it into a separate file. But nobody says like, well, why were there duplications there in the first place? Because like, like a lot of it is just down to shut up the tools and continue on your merry way without digging any further. I keep like extolling the virtues of type systems and how they can help your business logic to sort of shine and uncover various things. And I encountered it just like literally today, where we have some piece of code that consumes some external dependency that provides like a Swagger document with an API definition. We like code gen a bunch of stuff off of that. And then the person who wrote the thing consuming it didn't really they did like some basic way of doing it where it just doesn't care about the types at all. And in my refactoring pass, I started looking at it and I started refactoring, I started plugging in the types. And once I did that, it is now obvious that the specification that the Swagger describes and the data that they actually send doesn't match. And the only way you can really detect that is if you go through that exercise and nobody bothered.
Yeah, but you see, what you just described would probably be like high level stuff. This is not. I don't think this is a junior dev role. Like this is not even. I mean, maybe intermediate, but would you expect a junior developer to do what you just said?
But when we hire for the role, we say, hey, we want TypeScript people. And they say, hey, these are the TypeScript developers. And then they get to that part which doesn't really do any type checking, and like no alarm bells go off.
Do you have like for your code base, do you use, I mean, you use TypeScript for your
Yes,
code
we
base,
use
right?
TypeScript. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I guess it's relevant there because like if you actually already use TypeScript, and you should get warnings when you don't use add the types. Like
Well,
you should
you
get
get
code warnings.
warnings where you don't have explicit types, but whenever there are implicit types and some of those types happen to be any, you get no warnings at all,
Any.
and everything just
Oh,
works. And then everything just works. And as soon as you start fixing those, like we have a rule against explicit any's, which helps. But there's a bunch of places where there are implicit any's, because let's say somebody calls some function like json.parse, which returns an any. Because what else would it should return unknown in all fairness, but they didn't have unknown at the time, so now it's forever going to be any. For backwards compatibility, there's nothing you can really do about it. And that thing basically infects the entire chain, because now it's just any percolating all the way down, no errors, no warnings, and if they happen to do everything right so it doesn't fail at runtime, everything calls it a day, everybody. So, but it's not correct. And as soon as you start actually putting types on things, it's like, oh, this thing lights up, that thing lights up. Like, that means that there's potential for breakage here, potential for breakage there. People don't understand exactly what they're building. They just like, anyway, I feel like I'm gonna turn it into a rant, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's
I've
okay.
been
It's
I've been
therapy,
somewhat
basically.
demoralized by that lately. And
So no,
you know, it's just like, you can talk about it for so long and then eventually just be like, you know what? You don't want it there? Okay, fine. I cannot put that there myself, and just do the tickets and call it a day just like everybody else. And, trade a little piece of my soul for that, and, be on my merry way. So that's not a good feeling to have, you know?
yeah, I agree. But now, like for me, when I do code reviews, these are the things I look out for in the code, like to see if you have like the correct types, and if you know, like in cases where you have to create like the type for what you're expecting, like how well did you do these kind of things? Like, I mean, yeah, like things like this. Like, what's like the review process? What does it look like?
Well,
Because I think like if you do reviews, like these are the kind of things like other pair
these things are
programmers
could
can
be
can.
really hard to catch in review, because that type of review would have to be so in depth. And the problem is that, in the beginning of the project, there's like 4 developers on it. There's enough time to review everybody's code. But now when there's 25, there's no way to review everybody's. And people who are not as sophisticated pass through things that I would not have passed. So it just, you know, it's like fire. It starts, but then it starts spreading, and like you can't extinguish it all, because it spreads much faster than you can extinguish it, because it just
Mm.
covers more and more area. And so I guess it kind of betrays the state where people just jump into coding without giving it due thought. It's like, okay, well,
You know
ticket
what?
ticket says do this, I'll just do this, I'm done, right? It's not like, let's step back for like half an hour and consider it and see if that makes sense. It just feels like that is not happening.
You know, I want to share a thought with you,
Mm.
and I think I used to work in a team where like we had this review process where like you have two devs, and then the devs did not have the um, permission to merge. Like you only the senior devs or like um, the team technical lead have the permission to merge. So like after you get two reviews by peer reviews, then you still have like a bit of a review from like the tech dev before the code gets into production.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like maybe it could be the system, and also if someone has to do like a rework a few times, like Vasili said, don't do this twice, or like you learned not to do something one time, two times. I think it becomes a habit over time, because sometimes, like even now, like we have peer reviews in my team, and
I thought that for the longest time, but it
yeah,
just doesn't seem to work the same way.
yeah,
So we have the same process. We have like 2 people must review, And like there's all of these conditions that have to happen for the things to get merged, but there's just so many things trying to get merged that there's literally no chance in reviewing them all. And if you turn away things too much, then you're that guy who just constantly preventing the releases from happening. And even though it is for the right reasons, eventually you say, well, okay, fuck it, let's just merge that in. Who cares, right? Like we have to make the deadline. We have to make the deadline. We'll fix it later. The later never happens. And then, when problems inevitably arise because like some weird behaviors are starting to affect each other and cause like these weird side effects and bugs, it's like, well, the code quality is crap. Well, I could have told you as much. I was there when it was being merged in.
I saw it.
Like
But
I did see it. It's just I don't know.
I have another question for you, Vasili. On this, right?
Mm,
Let's say, like you said now, like you don't want to be that guy, but then it's something else to talk about. Let's say you put a review on, I mean, you are just a team member, not a team lead now. You're the team member, and your co-dev put a review and on your PR, like a comment on your PR about a suggestion to
mm-hmm.
on your PR. And how do you feel about it? First of all, how does it make you feel? I'm asking because I learned that apparently this kind of comment makes some people really nervous and sometimes a bit defensive.
Like
Like
having
they just
suggestions on their MRs.
yeah, yeah, like a bit defensive and like, but I want to know if you've ever felt that way. And not right now. I'm not asking you right now. If you've ever felt that way from the beginning of your career, because I'm trying to learn something here, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt like this before?
Well, before certainly, it's hard to. I don't remember actually, to be honest with you. Um, there was definitely code reviews where I've been shown the error of my ways, right? And it was like, oh, okay, well, I may have not known about certain things, right? But um, I don't know. I I I rarely have stuff beyond nitpicks on my code reviews, and I don't know if people don't understand what I write, so they just don't know how to review it, or that it's like just decent enough where the nitpicks, a few nitpicks here and there, is really all that it deserves. But like I haven't had like a very in-depth thing where somebody said like, okay, your entire approach is not the best. Like I haven't had that in years. So I don't know if it sounds like a humble brag or what, but
You get to do it. You get to do it, Vasily. I mean, if you if you really have if you put in the effort to write good codes, yeah, yeah, you get to brag
so
about it.
recently, I came up with a technical solution that had unintended consequences, which we had to basically scrap. But they would not be obvious during the code review, so they only came about when stuff went live.
Mm.
Uh, and it was like, fair enough, we did not consider this thing. Let's scrap it and come up with a different solution, which we did, which was still primarily based on, well, no, that entire piece got removed. And when I was brought into it trying to figure out how to solve it, I didn't really have the full picture. I made certain assumptions that were incorrect, and if I did not make them, I probably would not have attempted to solve it that way. Um, but yeah, like in the review, it was not obvious that that's what's gonna play out. So as far as these things that like did not work out entirely, that's the first one in a while. Usually my proposals have a tendency to work.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I was asking is because I'm trying to understand how it feels. Because personally, I put a lot of effort in my work, you know, to be able to say like, yeah, I did. I thought about the scenarios, likely scenarios, and I chose to go this route. But I also started to imagine that other people do the same. And when you start to give a suggestion to their work, it makes them feel like they did not they did not do something right, which honestly could be uncomfortable for anyone to bear, like at some point,
Yeah,
especially if you put effort into it. So
yeah,
now I'm trying to see like over time, I feel like it kind of when you say you don't want to be that guy, I'm starting to feel like it could actually start to build up some kind of resentment or
yeah.
like some kind of like conflict amongst like
It's not necessarily
co-devs.
conflict. It's just like you just like you sort of sigh and raise your hands up and you're like, oh, this bullshit again. Like, okay, well, there's only so much I can do, right? Because like you said, like you want to take extra care with the stuff that you do. So on the latest refactor, when I was trying to wrangle that external swagger that we code gen off of to make it work correctly, I was trying to come up with some types, and I legit went to the TypeScript chat and Telegram and was like asking questions about how to construct the thing that I want to construct to best describe like the business logic there. Like that's the extent of the effort, among other things, right? So
Mm-hmm. That's a lot of effort, actually.
yeah,
That's a lot of effort. But now, like, when this kind of things happen, like right now, you as a lead now, if there is this kind of situation in your team where you feel like, okay, someone feels some how do I best phrase this question? Like you're noticing a situation like, oh, someone is uncomfortable about the review comment, or like someone gives a lot of review comment, or this kind of things, or you are trying to like see how best to resolve conflicts that might happen when people actually give each other suggestions. Because I know developers are like musicians in a way. Like we walk around with big egos. So like really, really big egos, and you feel like your work might be the best until someone shows you something. And now it could be difficult to accept because yeah, to you, you have you have written the best version of the code. But now someone is giving you a suggestion. And over time,
well, I mean, you could
it starts to
that's
build.
the ego thing should be long past the time when you become a senior. Like that's the other
Yeah.
thing too. Like the whole title inflation thing is maybe one of the hallmarks of being senior is actually letting go of that. And now people get promoted through the ranks so fast that they don't go through that personal transformation where they can actually look at things and be like, you know what? That's right. You know, there's something in here that I was missing, and thank you for pointing that out. So I don't know. I don't really have that type of conflict, to be honest with you, at work. It's pretty much
No, no, no.
non-existent. It's just I don't know. The
But
expression
how
is
would
like,
you handle it?
how would I
You
handle it?
as a lead, like you see it in the team,
Like
how would you
if I'm a lead and then person A gives person
and
B feedback and there's
and
conflict there?
yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I mean, if you're the ultimate tiebreaker, then whatever you say goes. So you just pick what the better solution is, and you say that that's the one that goes. You know,
Yeah?
everybody should learn from what was happening.
You know, I think this would be a solution, but in my opinion, I feel like it could also mean that person A, if you pick person A today, I feel like now you've given person A some more
Well,
ammo.
come on, Mo. This is not kindergarten. Like, screw that
I'm telling
noise.
you real
Honestly,
stuff.
I
I'm
don't have
telling
patience for that.
you.
Like, if people have some high school level grudges about comments on their pull
I'm,
requests,
I'm being
I
very
just
realistic with you.
don't,
Vasily, you'll be surprised.
don't ask
You
me that
really
question
be.
today. I just have no patience for that bullshit today, to be honest with you. Some other
No,
day, you know, we had like
it's real.
2 weeks of really great weather. It was frosty and sunny, and today's the first day when the weather changed and it's like gloomy and
Yeah.
dark. So my
Yeah.
mood is kind of in the crapper today, and you're asking me these kindergarten level drama
Are
questions.
you
Like, oh,
saying you've never seen it? No, but are you saying you've never seen this before? I'm sure you have, right?
maybe not
Of
not
course it
really. I
happens.
mean, not really, not recently.
I'm trying to learn about it. I want to know what would be the best way to handle it because right now I'm working on my communication,
Mm.
you know, and I realized that my communication is really direct. I'm a very direct person, in terms of like it is white, it is white. I don't tell
Yes,
you it's off white or like it's like,
it's
off
eggshell,
green.
Mo. It's
Yeah,
eggshell.
no. So like I think a few years ago I was working in this team where like it was I think maybe yeah, it's been a while.
Mm.
And it was a very young team, right? Like most people were young. It's not if you're working in a mixed team where you have like people, more mature people, it's different. But in a young team, it could be get competitive really fast. And I find that the way my communication was a bit too straightforward. So at some point I had like one-on-one with the manager and like I was told about it and I had to learn how to handle it. But now I feel like I'm getting more mature in my career and I'm getting a point where like yeah, I need to learn how to handle certain scenarios in a team in certain situations, you know.
See, by now, I am so mindful of people's feelings that I just gladly let them merge shitty code, and that's not a good thing either.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
what is like, what are we there for? To make sure that everybody is just happy singing "Kumbaya," or to actually ship something that works first time, preferably.
because it works doesn't mean it's good, right?
Yeah, no,
It
fair
doesn't really.
enough. But if it works the first time, it's already a good thing because sometimes it doesn't even work the first time around. You have to like do a hot fix.
Really?
Well,
Like,
no, I'm kidding. It's not that bad. I mean, obviously, uh, but the point is that I don't know. I guess like the questions that you have right now about the navigating people's feelings right now today is probably not the best time to ask me these because they just piss me off.
you know what? You're allowed to rant. It's us here, and like it's me. You can go on. I will listen. I will listen and take out the points from the rant. So you go on.
No.
Tell me.
It's not that I have something to say. It's just I prefer not to say anything on a subject because um, I just right now I really don't have the patience for it. It's like, oh, my comment made you feel bad. Well, get over it. Fix the damn code and live your life another day. Like, nobody died because somebody made a comment on your PR. Honestly, like the level of high school teenage drama over code reviews, like unless it's really bad, unless it's like people like throwing insults and being demeaning and like doing like really terrible things, which is a completely different problem. But if somebody just has anxiety about code reviews, well, I don't know, write better code so you're more confident in what you're putting out there. Like, I don't know, like I don't know how to solve people's lack of confidence in themselves. It's one of the things that only is obtainable through experience, and so you have to have experience to obtain confidence in your skills. And in the beginning, if you're in a new team and you're sending stuff for code review and you like not fitting in with the style or whatever, and you're getting a lot of feedback, well, hey, that's a process of getting experience so that you know how to do it to a level of quality that everyone expects, and then you don't have that problem anymore if you know what you're doing. So really, I don't really know what to say about that besides this.
I mean, it's good enough. I feel maybe I will ask you another day.
Maybe we should revisit it another day when it's a
Another day,
little bit sunnier outside.
because for me, what I want to learn is like how to handle this kind of situation amongst like two people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I was thinking of is like we have this staff dev on our team. He has a very interesting approach to stuff like this. It's like a very he makes it into like he's not choosing a side, you know. So I see how he handles it. I've seen how he handles it like twice. I've seen the way he handled
Mm-hmm.
it twice, and I thought it was interesting because he didn't really like pick a side. So it was just trying to say, oh, if you do why you do this way, he explained it, and why you do this way, he explained it to the two people involved,
Mm-hmm.
and he then gave them the opportunity to talk to each other and like, you know, because at the end of the day, it was more usually this kind of thing. It's not like you don't know what is right or wrong. It's just that most people don't want to be wrong. So you
Well,
would,
the nature of this business is that there's only so few ways to be actually wrong, and there's so many ways to just have a valid approach that just differs in people's sensibilities. So I guess thankfully I don't see many solutions that are like wrong, where someone can come in and be like, this is wrong. Somebody may come in and say, I would have done it differently, but the way that we do code reviews is not necessarily to do that at that time. Like if you're saying that you would do it differently at that time, that means you missed the opportunity to have your input when that thing was like planned and discussed and analyzed. Because if it's been planned and analyzed and discussed, there was a time where we said, okay, I think the reasonable solution for this problem is this, and then somebody goes in and implements it. So at that time, if you in the code review say, I would have done it completely differently, well, GG, you should have been there a week ago, because now it's too late, right? So
yeah.
it's a different issue.
Hmm.
And at least for this project, the majority of stuff that we build is trivial enough where there really isn't too many ways of going about it. The only problem with the solution is when they replicate bad patterns and don't give due care to the process of getting rid of those patterns. Like that process is happening very, very slowly. And for some things, it's possible to do. Like, for instance, for some smells in code, we can leverage ESLint with custom rules, set
Hmm.
that rule to warning, and then analyze our code base, detect where all of those things are happening, create tickets to fix all of them, and then when they're all fixed, turn the rule to error so it's not allowed ever again, right? You just slowly strangle it piece by piece. But for some things, like you can't really automate it. Like you have to see it in its entirety to understand that it's a bad way of doing things. Maybe it was developed that way for obviously it was developed that way for a certain reason. It might have even been like it might have even seemed reasonable at the time to do it like this, but now looking at the finished product, you realize that that was like a really bad idea. And stuff like that can
Hmm.
sit there for months and nothing is going to get down about it because it's a big effort. Like you can't strangle it piece by piece. And the other thing too is if you have 10 examples of a bad pattern in your code base and 2 examples of good code pattern in your code base, guess which one people are going to replicate going
Of
forward.
course. Of course.
So a
Of
month
course.
from now you're going to have 20 bad ones and 2 good ones. Maybe 3 if you're lucky. If you're like contributing to the same code base, you might have 3 or 4, but the rest is going to be replicated much faster. And the only realistic way of doing it is like just spec ops, you know, you parachute with your NVGs and your machine guns, you clear out the entire area and you fix it all and you get the hell out. But that's not a possibility usually because it just touches too many things. Like I was trying to um, sort out an issue because we have a lot of a lot of cyclical imports in our code base because some things were not well thought out in terms of where they should sit in the hierarchy. And having those make analysis of other things more difficult. So first you have to fix those. And I tried doing it, and like I have a stashed piece of like changes on my system that I can't even do anymore because it just conflicts all over the place because like changes are constantly happening, right? So it's a really tough proposition, and there needs to be a desire for it. We sort of rotated back from code reviews to like the desire to have better code, because ultimately you can bring the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I can talk about all the reasons why it's the right thing to do, and if nobody chooses to actually do it, it's all for naught. And eventually, what that usually causes is I just stop talking about it because, like, if my words fall on deaf ears, why strain my vocal cords doing that? It's just not worth it.
Yeah. 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 I I can understand that. And I hope it gets better. But quick question, yeah.
Mm.
How would you define your communication style?
Uh, in what context?
Like me?
No, no, I
I
mean like
think
code review comments, Slack messages,
no no
emails, face to
generally.
face.
Generally, and I will give you like the kind of example. Like I said earlier, for
Mm,
me, I like to speak directly.
yeah.
And sometimes based on the context, I might use a little bit of humor, but I'm still gonna get my point across directly. So like nobody is confused, you know? But I noticed that, and I think this might also come from like my culture, like where I'm from, because I think a lot of people where I'm from are like this too. But I noticed that here in Canada, like I've seen different people, they want to say something, but you have to really listen to what they're saying to actually get what they're trying to tell you. They could say like 10 sentences, and just right there on the sixth line, you probably will catch the point that they're trying to say in 10 sentences. So it's not really direct.
Mm,
And then they wrap it in the code. And there are also some people who use like inverse to communicate. Like they're really trying to say something, but what they're saying is actually the opposite of what they mean, like sarcasm, like
hmm.
there are different ways to communicate.
Yeah, no, I
But
mean I don't really use sarcasm because I mean I have to communicate primarily through text because I'm remote and sarcasm doesn't read
mhm.
at all in written communication, so that's like a non-starter.
Yeah.
But as I said, like I care about people's feelings more than I should be. Like the thing though is if I were a dictator in my project, the code quality probably would be much better, but then the deliverables would take much longer too. But democratic development process works really well if you want to replicate all the shitty patterns ad nauseum in your code base because nobody says anything. Everybody's happy to see more of the same, even though it's bad, because I don't know, I guess they can. The thing is like you can reason about it in isolation. But once you see the big picture, you then realize that like it's a massive pile where tracing things becomes impossible. You have to like jump through 25 different files to understand what a certain flow is doing because it's like everything is just smeared as a thin layer across the entire code base. Like I'm trying to work to a system where features are self-contained and isolated, but what ends up happening across the code base is that they are just dispersed everywhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then and then you have like all these crazy interplays between things that you did not expect to have interplays between, which makes debugging really hard. Like it creates like all of these issues. And I don't necessarily blame people because again, somebody created a pattern at the time or under pressure, it made sense in the context, in isolation, outside of like seeing the entire project. So that got merged. Then it got replicated 25 times over, and now it's like permanently in there. And not much you can do about it because by now it's too late. It's just, I don't know. It's
I
hard.
guess.
It's hard when people don't want to even, not even admit that, but like it's been a while since somebody said, you know what, that area of code is like really complicated. We should do something about it. You know, I sometimes I feel like I'm fighting like a solo battle where
Mhm.
nobody's sharing my goals, and it feels like they're not bad goals. Because the weird thing about it is like on paper they align with like the grand narrative that we want higher quality code, we want smoother processes, we want faster deployments to production. Like we want, as an organization, we want all of those things. But on the ground, we don't want any of those things. We just want to commit whatever makes the impression of working the first time around, because, you know, regardless if it's like replicating some bad pattern or not, because hey, we have deadlines to push. And trying to like resolve these two things is very demoralizing, because it's like I'm trying to do everything that we want, but I can't. It's not happening for various reasons. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but if you have to talk to someone about, let's say you see someone's code and you want to tell the person this is bad, how do you do it? Do you go straight like this is not a good way to do it? Or you say like, well, you've really done well. I think what is just missing here is, or like you say, or do you use like, how do you say? This is what I'm trying to learn. Like, how do you say? Because I also would ask you like, my follow-up question would
Mm.
be like to learn about your process, like how you do your process. But first, I'm curious about how you communicate your suggestions. Like, do you communicate straight, or do you prefer to use to make to do it with a soft blow? Like, yeah, like it's not good, but
I
I
mean,
think you've done other things
I
right.
do a lot of softballs, as I said, I do a lot of that. And in terms of proposing solutions, I have no trouble saying exactly what I want. But it's just, I think the problem, my personal problem, is that sometimes it feels like it will take me more time to explain how something should be done compared to just doing it myself. And I understand that people do not see things the same way. Because, like, sometimes when we have some requirement, I look at it and I immediately understand how we can do it so that it fits with the way that we should be doing it. You know, keeping it clean, like separating concerns, keeping things isolated, keeping things like reasonably sequestered so that it doesn't interfere with other things. And I see it right away. I was like, okay, I can see it in my head as like, okay, we can do it this way and that way, and it's not even that big of an effort. And we create the tickets for it, and then when it's done, it's like completely nothing like it. It's like, oh my god, why did we do it that way? I mean, it works, it kind of vaguely aligns, but not even like remotely close to how we could have done it properly. And it's replicating this bad pattern and that bad pattern, but nobody else has a problem with it when it's done that way. That's, I guess, my source of frustration is I'm the only one that has a problem with it. But I think that I have a problem with it for good reasons and out of abundance of experience. So I don't know what to do in this case. Like, should I just give up?
I mean, you can't give up, Vasili.
Well, who says
And
who? I can give up easy.
I don't think you should. But I also know like I think the shoes get really tighter as you get upper. I mean, this is what I think. I've not really been at that level, so I don't really know for sure. But I think it gets a bit more, it comes with a bit more people management. I think is the most difficult part of what we do because to write codes is I think, I mean, in theory should be the easiest part, but I think to work with other people could be like the challenging part because everyone has different attitude to what they do. Recently, I told you, some people really just want to do 9 to 5, do what they pay for, and go home. And this is not wrong. And then there's some people who can't sleep because they feel like they have to do it better before the next day. This also does not mean that it is the best way to do it. It doesn't make them necessarily better developers. It's just maybe they have nothing else to do, you know? So everybody has a very different attitude to this thing. And it's a job at the end of the day. It's a job and you all do your job.
Right,
And then
but is it too much to ask that it's done beyond just some perfunctory level?
from our perspective, because I mean I'm kind of like this too, but from our perspective, it feels like it's not too much. But from the perspective of someone who just thinks of it like I'm just doing my job. I mean, why would I want to give an extra 2 hours when I already just gave 8 hours and I'm not even paid 2 hours for this extra two
You
hours?
know what? I'm gonna say this. I don't want somebody to give extra 2 hours producing more of the same crap that they're producing in their normal day. That's not what I want. I want for people to get better so they can do better code in 4 hours as opposed to 10 hours of 8 the regular and then 2 the extra. That's what I
But
want to have.
but
So
you
people
see,
people who are not willing to go in that direction and they just like, oh well, I'm here 9 to 5. You're always gonna be there 9 to 5, and the quality that you produce is always gonna stay the same because you never really do anything about it. Like if you spend that 2 hours not on reproducing the same crappy patterns that you've seen 25 times, but like you go and ask somebody very tailored questions about the thing that you're trying to express and then internalize it and then start applying it in your daily life, you know, 2 hours here, 2 hours there, 1 year later, you're like way up there compared to where you were before. But that's what's lacking, seemingly at least. That I feel like this is what is lacking. I only have a couple of
mm,
people who are really striving to like hone their craft and improve their game.
see, at least you have some of these people, which is good. So I guess like if you put the energy into this part of these people, I think they would probably make you feel better and maybe they will be inspiring to the other ones. The thing is, these people don't even, most of the time, these people don't even get the recognition most times in the team. They get to do more work. In corporate, people who get to do extra get to do more work,
It's
which
just
is
that
not.
I know that these people, the other thing too is that, which is I think maybe also why it's happening the way it's happening, is people who hone their skills and people who improve their craft, eventually they realize that they can get some much better deal elsewhere. But the people who never improve their craft, they can be coasting in that position for years. For years. And I've seen that happen. I've seen people just like doing the same old for years and years and years. And, 10 years ago, when the economy was different and the software field was different, they were allowed to exist in that state perpetually, right? And then eventually it filters out most people who actually want to improve because they all leave for greener pastures, and you're left with a bunch of mediocrity. And I've been in companies where through that process, a bunch of people who were there were very, very mediocre, and they did not even kind of made any qualms about it. They're just like, I'm here doing my 9 to 5. I don't care about learning new things. I don't care about learning new frameworks. I don't care about going to like hacker conferences and meeting people and talking about all the cool things. I've been doing, I don't know, DB2 for last 15 years, and by God, I'm gonna keep doing it. It's like, well, shit.
Vasili, you know what? I don't think we should judge anyone who
I
see
mean, I
again.
don't, I'm not judging anyone. It's just that, it's just, I don't know.
Any
It's just
choice.
really
It's a
frustrating, you know? It is really frustrating. I
it is
want to see people achieve excellence.
yeah, but this is defined differently. Excellence is everyone has their definition of success, you
No,
know?
I'm not saying success. I'm saying, you're obviously you cannot reach an ideal, but you can be on your path toward it. So if you're not trying to reach excellence, you're not on path. You're not on the path toward it. And if you're not on a path toward it, like if you don't improve, you stagnate and eventually degrade.
This is true. Honestly, it is true, Vasili. But think about it this way. Let me just be like how do you say that thing? Advocate? Something advocate.
Devil's
Anyway.
advocate?
Think about it like this, right? When you were like 10 years ago, you had more time in your hands. You get to like what? After work, after you do your 8 hours, it's not, you don't even count the time. I know this because like I can relate to it. Like let's say you don't even count the time and then you start at 7, you're still on your desk till like what? 11, 10, 9, 12 sometimes, even past that, just learning new things, trying new things, doing other stuff outside of just learning things. Over time, as you get to like have more responsibilities in life, you start to find your interest in other things. Maybe you want to do something else. So like you don't even have as much time as you used to have to do other things. Some people, maybe they get into like a different business that actually pay them more money than where they work. And so now this seems to be, at the end of the day, some people do this thing just for what they get from it. So like it's not really like a good value to them to say like now I'm gonna take like 6 hours during the week to actually learn something new.
But
I
like
mean,
as I said, I don't begrudge anyone their choices. It's their choices to make and they make them. But is it too much to ask for something more aspirational than just the bare minimum? That's all I'm saying. That's the thing that I'm so frustrated by, is that I don't know if it's just a different approach that people have these days to treat it more utilitarian fashion. Like
mhm,
I think like if the field of software engineering had any romantic notions at its origin,
mhm.
they're long gone now. And
You,
I I guess I have this nostalgia for something that can never come back, maybe, or I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking.
it could
I don't
be.
even know what
I,
I'm saying at this point.
You
I'm
know
just
what?
frustrated
There
with
is
it.
also like the whole knowledge sharing thing. I think there is a culture where I am now, which I really like. We have like these meetings every 2 weeks. We just like get together to talk about like new concepts and like share this kind of knowledge. At least like this, if you don't get to spend time on your own to actually learn something, you could use this period to actually learn from other people's learning, you know. At least you get to learn something new and keep it in mind, you know. It's I guess most companies also don't really like provide the academic stuff for for people, because if there is like some form of academy where like you have like materials to actually like study, some people work these 8 hours and then you expect, I mean, I'm not making excuses for them, I'm just saying, I'm not making excuses for anyone, I'm just saying that everyone has like um their what they consider to be important, you
Yeah,
know.
no, that's
And
true.
from your own point of view, I can really relate because I can feel like, yeah, you really want
But like, I'm not
a
talking about other people's problems. I'm talking about my problems. This is like a
yeah,
coping and seething episode where I just like bitch
yeah,
about kids these days.
yeah,
Effectively, is what it
yeah.
is. Maybe I'm just getting too old for this.
Well,
I'm getting too old
I
for this shit.
Are you considering to retire soon? I mean, you said 20 years,
I
so
cannot afford to retire. We talked about this.
You know what? I guess then we'll find a solution to it
Yeah.
then. Maybe change the
You know what I
process,
can afford to
adjust it.
retire though? I can
What?
afford to retire this episode because it's been an hour.
Well, I see that, so I really want to say thank you. I mean, it was really nice to talk to you. I mean,
Was it today? I
I
was just bitching the
I learned a
entire
few
time.
things. I learned a few things, I learned a few things about like how you go about certain scenarios. I was sharing it with you, the conflict thing, communication style. I think you validated some of the things I was saying, and you also like shared some things about yourself
Yeah,
and what is
no, I
going on in your
mean,
team. So
I
yeah.
appreciate that you listen to me moan about it, even though there's no practical utility in most of the things that I was saying. It's just like venting the entire time.
Yeah, so this is good,
Yeah.
I hope other people also like get to benefit from it, and it'd be
Yes.
nice.
And if you think I'm talking about you, I wasn't. It was about somebody else.
Disclaimer, huh? Disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. Anyway,
All right, Mo.
good
Well,
to.
thank you. And I guess till the next time, thanks everyone who was watching. I hope you can tolerate that. We'll try not to do that again for a while at least anyway. And hopefully the weather will get better. I'll be in a cheerier mood next time. So we'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye
See
bye.
you. Bye.